For 8 months, Maya Richardson gave her umbrella to a man shivering in the rain every single evening. A worn jacket, no shoes that fit, hands that shook from cold. 5:45 p.m. without fail at the same subway entrance where he sat. She was 26, black, working 3 part-time jobs just to cover student loans. He was maybe 50, white, homeless, mumbling about boardrooms nobody cared about. Then one evening, everything changed. A black town car pulled up to her building at dusk. Tinted windows. A driver in a suit standing at attention by her rusted front gate. When Maya came home from her shift at the coffee shop, exhausted and soaked from the rain, her stomach dropped. "Miss Richardson," the driver said, "we're here about Marcus Webb." Marcus, the man from the subway. Her voice caught. "Is he okay?" The driver's expression was unreadable. "Ma'am, Mr. Webb would like to speak with you." 8 months earlier, Maya had noticed him for the first time. She took the red line every evening at 5:30. The entrance was 2 blocks from her apartment, right outside a shuttered department store. That's where Marcus sat, on a piece of cardboard, a thin jacket pulled tight around his shoulders, his belongings stuffed into a plastic shopping bag beside him. Most people walked past without looking. Some dropped coins into a paper cup without making eye contact. Maya had done the same thing for 3 weeks, telling herself she couldn't help everyone. She could barely help herself. But one evening in late February, the rain came down in sheets. Maya stood under the subway overhang, watching Marcus try to cover himself with a trash bag. Water pooled around him, soaking through his cardboard, through his jacket. He was shaking so hard she could see it from 20 feet away. She looked at her umbrella. It was cheap, bought from a bodega for $6. The metal ribs were bent. The fabric had a tear, but it kept the rain off. Maya walked over before she could talk herself out of it. "Excuse me," she said, holding out the umbrella. He looked up. His eyes were pale blue, clearer than she expected. He watched her like he was trying to figure out if this was a trick. "You need this more than I do," Maya said. He stared at the umbrella, then at her face. For a long moment he didn't move. "You'll get wet," he said quietly. His voice was rough but educated. "I've got a hood." Maya pressed the umbrella into his hand. "Take it." He took it slowly, like it might disappear. "Thank you, Mississippi Maya." She almost walked away then, almost went back to her routine of not seeing him, not getting involved. But something about the way he'd said thank you, with dignity, not desperation, made her pause. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus." He nodded once. "Marcus Webb." The next evening, she brought a second umbrella for herself and sat with him for a few minutes while the rain fell. The evening after that, she brought coffee in a thermos. By the end of the first week, it had become a routine she couldn't imagine breaking. 5:45 p.m. every single evening. Marcus was always there, always waiting at the same spot. They'd talk for maybe 10 minutes before she headed home. He'd ask about her day. She was working at a coffee shop mornings, tutoring high school kids in the afternoons, doing data entry at night when she could get the hours, paying off a degree in social work that hadn't led to a job yet. She'd ask about him and he'd tell her stories. Strange stories. "Back when I ran the acquisition team," he'd say, staring past her at nothing. "We'd close deals worth hundreds of millions before lunch." Or, "I had an office on the 40th floor once. Corner view. Could see the whole city." Maya figured he was confused. Maybe mentally ill, maybe just broken by life, building himself a past that felt more important than sitting on wet cardboard. She didn't correct him. She just listened. Other people weren't so kind. One evening in March, a teenager in a designer hoodie walked past and deliberately kicked Marcus's cup, scattering coins across the sidewalk. Maya was 10 feet away, about to cross the street. "Hey." She spun around, her voice sharp. "What's your problem?" The kid didn't even slow down. "He's blocking the path. That's somebody's father." Maya shot back. The kid kept walking. Marcus sat quietly, picking up coins from the dirty pavement. His hands shook. From cold or humiliation, Maya couldn't tell. She helped him gather the scattered change. It smelled like cigarette butts and old gum. "You didn't have to do that," Marcus said softly. "Yeah, I did." He looked at her for a long time. Then he smiled, a sad knowing smile. You've got fight in you. That's rare these days. He put the coins back in his cup. You're going to need it. Maya didn't understand what he meant. Not then. She just handed him his coffee, same as always, and headed home. By April, the routine was as automatic as breathing. Wake up at 6, open the coffee shop at 7, work until 2, tutor until 5, stop by the subway entrance at 5:45, sit with Marcus for 10 minutes, go home, do data entry until midnight. It wasn't charity. It didn't feel like charity. It felt like the only thing in her life that made sense. Maya's apartment was a studio in a building that should have been condemned years ago. For 100 square feet, a hot plate instead of a stove, a bathroom where the sink dripped constantly no matter how many times she called the landlord. Rent was $850 a month, and she was always one paycheck away from disaster. The eviction notice had been taped to her door in January. She'd negotiated a payment plan, an extra $50 a week until she caught up. She'd been paying it off ever since, which meant every other bill got pushed to the breaking point. Her kitchen counter told the story. Student loan payment, $320 past due. Credit card bill, minimum payment $85, balance $3,400. Electric bill, final notice. Cell phone suspended twice already this year. And in the middle of all that paper, a loaf of bread, instant coffee, and ramen noodles. Maya stood at the counter on a Thursday night in late April, doing the math in her head. She'd gotten paid that morning $180 from the coffee shop, another $120 from tutoring. Subtract rent, subtract the payment plan, subtract subway fare for 2 weeks. $70 left for everything else. She opened the fridge. Half a carton of eggs, some wilted spinach she should have thrown out days ago, a bottle of ketchup. That was it. Her stomach had been empty since breakfast, but she'd learned to ignore that feeling. She'd eat tomorrow, or the day after. It didn't matter. What mattered was having something to bring Marcus. Coffee, maybe a sandwich when she could afford bread and peanut butter. Maya closed the fridge and leaned against it, pressing her forehead to the cold metal door. She could stop. She could keep the coffee for herself, save the money, catch up on the electric bill before they shut it off. Marcus would understand. He'd probably tell her to stop anyway if he knew how tight things were. But the thought of walking past that subway entrance, seeing him there, not stopping. She couldn't do it. At the coffee shop the next day, her manager noticed. Carla was 40-something, Dominican, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd worked at the shop for 15 years and had seen every version of struggling that existed. "You eating today?" Carla asked, watching Maya wipe down tables during the afternoon lull. "I ate breakfast," Maya lied. "Ah." Carla crossed her arms. "You feeding that homeless man again?" "His name is Marcus." "I know his name, Mija. I'm asking if you're feeding him instead of yourself." "I'm fine." Carla sighed. She disappeared into the back and came back 5 minutes later with a wrap sandwich and a bag of chips. She pressed them into Maya's hands. "You eat this now. I don't want you passing out on my shift." Her voice softened. "He's a person. I get it. But you know what else?" "What?" "You're a person too." Maya stared at the sandwich. Her throat felt tight. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just eat." That night, lying on her mattress on the floor, she'd sold the bed frame 3 months ago to make rent. Maya stared at the ceiling and did the math again. If she skipped her Friday tutoring session, she could pick up an extra shift at the coffee shop. Another $60. If she walked to work instead of taking the subway twice a week, she'd save $8. If she asked the landlord for 1 more week. Her phone buzzed. A text from the electric company. Final notice. Service will be disconnected in 5 days without payment of $143. Maya closed her eyes. 1 more week of stopping by the subway entrance. That's all she'd commit to. 1 more week and then she'd have to stop. She'd explain it to Marcus. He'd understand. She had to take care of herself first. That's what anyone would say. That's what made sense. But when Friday evening came, Maya still brought coffee in the thermos, still stopped at the subway entrance at 5:45. Marcus was waiting, same as always, and when she sat down beside him and he asked if she was okay, really okay, because he could see it in her face. Maya had to look away so he wouldn't see her crying. Marcus wasn't at the subway entrance on Monday evening. Maya stood there with the thermos and her cheap umbrella, scanning the empty sidewalk. His cardboard was gone. His shopping bag of belongings gone. Even the damp spot where he usually sat had dried up, leaving no trace he'd ever been there. She waited through the evening rush. Waited while commuters poured past her, nobody noticing she was looking for someone. By the time she finally went home, it was dark, and her chest felt hollow. She told herself he'd just moved to a different spot. People did that. Maybe someone had hassled him. Maybe the police had cleared the block. It didn't mean anything bad had happened. But she checked the spot again the next evening. Still nothing. Wednesday, empty. Thursday, empty. By Friday, Maya couldn't ignore the knot in her stomach anymore. She stopped by the Westside shelter on her way home from tutoring, even though it was 15 blocks out of her way and her feet were killing her. The man at the intake desk barely looked up. Name? I'm looking for someone. Marcus Webb. Older white man, maybe 50. Usually sits near the Red Line entrance on Amsterdam. We don't track people who don't check in here. Can you just look? Maya pressed. Please. The man sighed and typed something into his computer. Waited. Shook his head. No one by that name in our system. What about hospitals? Is there a way to check? You family? Maya hesitated. I'm a friend. Then no. Privacy laws. The man's tone softened just slightly. Look, people move around. He probably found another spot. They always do. Maya called 2 hospitals that night. Neither would tell her anything without a family connection or a patient ID number she didn't have. On the 8th day, she went back to the subway entrance with a paper bag and a note inside. Hope you're okay. M. She left it where Marcus usually sat and tried not to think about what it meant that she was leaving food for a ghost. That evening, he was there. Maya almost missed him because she wasn't expecting it. But there he was, sitting on the same cardboard, his shopping bag beside him. Thinner than before, his face more drawn. She got off at the next stop and ran back. Marcus. He looked up and for a second she thought he didn't recognize her. Then his face softened. Miss Maya. She crouched down beside him, breathing hard. Where were you? I checked shelters. I called hospitals. Had some trouble. His voice was raspier than usual. I'm all right now. You don't look all right. I'm upright. That counts for something. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's when she noticed his wrist. A hospital bracelet still attached with a date from 4 days ago. What happened? Maya reached for his hand. Marcus pulled back quickly. Nothing. Just a checkup. Marcus. I'm fine. His tone left no room for argument. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. White, slightly bent, with a name and phone number printed in black ink. He held it out to her. If something happens to me, he said quietly, I need you to call this number. Maya stared at the card. What do you mean? If something happens, just promise me. You're not going anywhere. Maya. His voice was firm. Serious. Promise me. She took the card. It read Victoria Chun, attorney at law. Promise. Marcus nodded slowly like a weight had lifted. Good. She wanted to ask who Victoria Chun was. Wanted to ask why he'd been in the hospital, what that bracelet really meant. But commuters were flooding past, and Marcus had already closed his eyes, leaning back against the wall like the conversation had exhausted him. Maya slipped the card into her wallet and headed home. She didn't call the number. Not yet. 3 weeks later, Marcus collapsed. Maya was handing him the thermos of coffee when his hand started shaking. Not the usual tremor from cold or age. This was different. Violent. The thermos slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the sidewalk, coffee spilling across the concrete. Marcus. He tried to say something, but his words came out slurred. His eyes rolled back and then his whole body folded, knees buckling, shoulders crumpling forward. Maya caught him before his head hit the pavement. Somebody call 911. She screamed. A woman in a business suit pulled out her phone. A man getting off the subway stopped, stared, kept walking. Maya lowered Marcus onto his side, her hands shaking. His breathing was shallow, erratic. His lips were turning pale. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Come on, Marcus. Stay with me." The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. Felt like 6 hours. Maya climbed into the back without asking permission. One of the paramedics tried to stop her. "Are you family?" But she was already inside, gripping Marcus's hand as they loaded him onto the gurney. "I'm all he's got," she said. The paramedic didn't argue. At the hospital, everything moved too fast and too slow at the same time. They wheeled Marcus through double doors into the emergency room. A nurse took Maya's arm and guided her to a waiting area. Plastic chairs bolted to the floor, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a TV on mute showing the evening news. She sat down, realized she was still holding the empty thermos. Her tutoring session had started 30 minutes ago. She pulled out her phone and texted her client. "Emergency. Can't make it today. I'm sorry." The client replied immediately. "Is everything okay?" Maya didn't answer. An hour passed, then another. Finally, a doctor called her name. "Maya Richardson." She jumped up. "That's me." The doctor was young, South Asian, exhausted. Her name tag read Dr. Kapoor. "You're here for Marcus Webb?" "Yes." "Is he okay?" "He's stable. Severe pneumonia, possible heart complications. We're running tests." She paused. "But we have a problem." Maya's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "He has no insurance card, no ID, no emergency contact listed. We need to transfer him to County General." "What does that mean?" "It means he'll get care, but not here. County has space. County General is where people wait for days. It's policy. Without proof of insurance or ability to pay." "Check his records," Maya said quickly. "He told me he used to work in finance. There has to be something." The doctor's expression didn't change. "Do you have proof of that?" "No, but then I can't check. We need documentation. Something." Maya's mind raced. She thought about the business card Marcus had given her, still sitting in her wallet. Thought about the stories he'd told. The boardrooms, the corner office, the deals worth hundreds of millions. She'd always assumed he was confused. But what if he wasn't? "I have a lawyer's contact," Maya said. "Someone who knows him." The doctor's eyebrows rose. "Can you call them now?" "Yes." Maya pulled out the card and dialed the number with shaking hands. It rang 3 times. "Victoria Chun." "Miss Chun, my name is Maya Richardson. I'm calling about Marcus Webb." There was a pause. A long one. "Is Marcus all right?" "He's in the hospital. St. Catherine's. They're trying to transfer him to county, but I thought maybe you could." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Maya looked at Dr. Kapoor. "She's coming." The doctor nodded slowly. "We'll wait." Victoria Chin arrived in 18 minutes. Maya knew because she counted every one of them. When the elevator doors opened, a woman in her 50s stepped out. Asian, wearing a tailored suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Her eyes scanned the waiting room and landed on Maya. "Miss Richardson?" Maya stood. "Yes." Victoria extended her hand. "Thank you for calling me. Where is he?" Dr. Kapoor appeared and led them to a small consultation room. Victoria sat down, opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, legal papers, medical records, and something else. A photograph. Maya caught a glimpse of it before Victoria closed the folder. Marcus, decades younger, standing in a suit, shaking hands with someone who looked important. "Dr. Kapoor," Victoria said calmly. "Marcus Webb is a former client of mine. He has full medical coverage through a private trust. I'll provide all necessary documentation." The doctor's expression shifted. "A trust?" "Yes. Established in 2019. Victoria handed over several pages. "You'll find his insurance information here, along with authorization for any necessary treatment." Dr. Kapoor scanned the documents. Her jaw tightened. "This says he has platinum-level coverage." "That's correct. Then why is he?" She stopped herself. "I'll get him moved to a private room immediately." After the doctor left, Victoria turned to Maya. "How long have you known Marcus?" 8 months. I see him every evening at the subway entrance. I bring him coffee. Victoria's expression softened. He told me about you. He did? In his last email. 3 weeks ago. She opened the folder again and pulled out a printed message. He said you were the only person in this city who saw him as human. Maya's throat felt tight. What happened to him? Miss Chun? Victoria hesitated, then sighed. Marcus Webb was the CEO of Webb Capital for 22 years. He built it from nothing into a firm managing $4 billion in assets. She paused. And then his wife died. Cancer. He took a leave of absence to grieve, but he never came back. The board pushed him out. Hostile takeover. By the time the legal battles were over, he'd lost the company, most of his wealth, and his will to keep fighting. Maya stared at her. So the stories were true. Every word. Victoria's voice was quiet. He walked away from what was left. Gave up his apartment, his car, everything. Said he wanted to see what the world looked like when you had nothing. I've been managing a trust for him, trying to convince him to come back. He refused. Why? Because he said the world treated him differently when he had nothing. And he wanted to see who would still treat him like a person. Victoria looked at Maya. You did. Marcus stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. Maya visited every day, sometimes twice. Brought him books from the library. Sat with him while he slept. Listened when he wanted to talk. He's stronger now, Dr. Kapoor said on the 10th day. Physically, at least. But he needs somewhere stable to recover. Not the street. I'm working on it, Victoria said. She'd been there too, coordinating with social workers, setting up a care plan. On the 14th day, Marcus was discharged to a private rehabilitation facility across town. Clean rooms, real beds, staff who knew his name. Maya visited him there on a Saturday afternoon. He was sitting up in bed, looking healthier. His color had returned. His eyes were clearer. You didn't have to do all this, he said when she walked in. Yeah, I did. He smiled. That fight in you. I told you it was rare. Maya sat down in the chair beside his bed. Why didn't you tell me about who you were? Would it have mattered? She thought about that. No. Exactly. Marcus's voice was soft. You brought me coffee because I was cold. Not because I used to be someone. That's why it mattered. They sat in silence for a while. Then Marcus reached for a folder on his bedside table. Victoria helped me put this together, he said, handing it to her. Maya opened it. Inside were documents, scholarship information, a full ride to finish her social work degree, housing assistance, a job offer at a nonprofit Marcus had quietly funded for years. I can't accept this. You can. And you will. Marcus's tone left no room for argument. You gave me dignity when I had nothing. Let me give you opportunity. Maya's hands trembled. This is too much. It's not enough. But it's a start. 6 months later, Maya graduated with her degree. Marcus was in the audience, sitting beside Victoria, applauding louder than anyone else. She'd moved into a small but decent apartment. 1 bedroom, heat that worked, a kitchen with a real stove. She was working at the nonprofit, helping homeless veterans navigate the system. Every evening at 5:45, she still stopped by the subway entrance. Not to see Marcus. He was living in a modest apartment now, volunteering at a legal aid clinic, rebuilding his life quietly. But there was always someone else there. Someone sitting on cardboard, holding a cup, hoping to be seen. Maya would sit down, offer coffee, and listen, because Marcus had taught her something. Dignity doesn't come from what you have. It comes from how you treat people when they have nothing. And that lesson was worth more than any corner office or billion-dollar deal. Small things aren't small. They're everything.